Welcoming you to a life of awareness, the Presence Project is excited for you to join us for today's podcast with your host, Paul Kerzner.
Hello and welcome to episode 68 of Are You Being Present? My name is Paul Kerzner. I want to welcome you to the present moment. I want to welcome you to the here and now. And I want to thank you wholeheartedly, sincerely, and deeply for joining me in this unique and beautiful present moment. The title and topic for today's podcast is Seeing People for Who They Are, How They Are, and Where They Are in the Present Moment. This topic is very near and dear to my heart. It is something that I talk about extensively with patients at my clinic, and it is definitely something that I reflect upon often throughout my life, recognizing that this is an issue for many of us, including myself. The question is, what do I mean by seeing people for who they are, how they are, and where they are? And why would I decide to spend time talking on this topic? As we go through life, we enter into many different kinds of relationships with many different kinds of people. And in these relationships, we oftentimes don't see the people for who they are, or how they are, or where they are. We see them for their potential. We project upon them. We hold past experiences that we had with them, and we overlay it into the experiences that we're currently having with them. And this is common for almost everyone on Earth right now that's having interpersonal relationships. Years ago, I was told by someone who I respected and do respect that relationships are one of the highest forms of spirituality, but they're also one of the most difficult. And at the time, I didn't really understand completely what he was trying to relay to me, but it hit me very hard, and it stuck with me till this day. And that was actually about 13 years ago. And for some reason, it's replayed into my head over and over and over again until I was able to dissect it and understand that, yes, that's true. Relationships are a form of spirituality. They challenge us at our core. They are worthwhile, but they bring about a lot of different aspects of our reality, of another person's reality. You know, two people coming together, it's going to be challenging. And one of the biggest challenges that I see, that I've experienced personally in my own life, is not seeing a person for who they are, how they are, and where they are. That I chose to willfully or unconsciously overlook red flags because I wanted to believe in their potential. And I think that I understand why we want to see someone's potential and we want to hold them to that, but that always leads to suffering because no one is going to match up to the potential that you see in them. It doesn't mean that they're not capable of living and reaching that potential. It means that you're doing them a disservice by holding them to that potential because that's your perception, not their perception. And who are you to determine whose potential is what? But why is this so difficult for us? Why is it so challenging for us to see people for who they are in the moment? And that has a lot to do with presence. Being present means that you have clarity and are in a state of acceptance and what that means ultimately is that you see a person for who they are in that moment. Not who they were, not who they may be, but who they are. And sometimes you might not like what you see, but being in a relationship means that there has to be a level of acceptance for who the person is. You can't pick and choose bits and pieces of that person and hope that that's going to be enough or that'll be good or it's going to work. But it's a very common way of being, a common behavior for human beings to just pick and choose the parts of a person's personality that we like, that makes us feel good, and set aside all of the parts of their personality that challenge us or hurt us or bother us. The ultimate form of respect that you can pay anyone in your life at this moment is to see them for who they are, how they are, and where they are. And then if you're not, you need to understand that the suffering that you're going to incur with them and especially with yourself, is based on that perception, that lack of acceptance, that lack of clarity for that this person is completely dynamic. We don't really ever know another person. It's impossible to really know anyone else. It doesn't matter if that's your spouse, that's a family member, it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, everyone is unique, and you don't know what's going on in someone else's head. You just don't. You don't know what they're thinking, even if they tell you. The ego is so powerful, the subconscious mind is so powerful that it's very difficult to speak complete truth. And a lot of times people will tell you what they're thinking based on what they think you want to hear. And that's not truth at all. It doesn't mean they're not being honest. It just means that there's not a complete picture going on, and that leads to suffering. So what do we do with this? Well, it's going to take a level of reflection, and you might have to, and what that means is it's time for introspection. And I've talked about introspection and how important it is, and how hard and how difficult it is to be introspective, because when you're in a state of introspection, when you're looking at everything that's going on in your life, you must take ownership over everything that's happening for you. Outward displacement and blame will only lead to suffering. It's a lack of acceptance, it's a lack of ownership of your reality and what you're manifesting and creating through your thoughts and your words and your behavior. And not seeing people for who they are, how they are, and where they are will always lead to suffering. It will always lead to a state of resistance and resentment. How do I know this? Well, there's been many instances in my life, personally speaking, that I've willfully not seen people for who they are, how they are, and where they are, and I've incurred suffering. And there's been some very tough lessons that I've had to learn. And I accept those lessons because I was a participant in what it took to lead up to that lesson. And no one really wants to cause suffering for themselves. But if you're not conscious, if you're not present, if you're not clear with how you're seeing people, places, and things, and there's a refusal to acknowledge different facets and aspects of the people, places, and things in your reality at any given moment, it's going to lead to suffering. Because something's going to come up, someone's going to say something, someone's going to behave in a certain way, and it's not going to be in alignment with the way that you perceive them to be, not the way that they are. And that's why this conversation is so important, because you need to ask yourself, am I seeing this person in their entirety? Not bits and pieces of what I like about them, not who they were, not who they could be. You have to let those things go, because it'll always lead you astray, and your ego will always be right there supporting those kind of perceptions which lack presence. And of course, we've talked about the ego and how it always wants to take you out of the present moment. That voice in your head that's constantly barraging you with all these thoughts that are triggering feelings to take you out of the moment. So this kind of topic is relevant to everyone. And it has a lot to do with how we're raised. It has a lot to do with society and how it values other people's opinions of who we are, how we need external validation for a sense of self to support our sense of self-esteem. But those never last. There's not enough pats on the back. There's not enough external validation telling us how great we are. It's an endless pit. So my suggestion to you today, or whenever you want, whenever you feel capable, is to look inward and ask yourself, am I really seeing this person for who they are, how they are, and where they are? And if I'm not, why? And you have to do this in a state of observation without judgment, because once you start doing this work, you're going to see that there have been many instances that you haven't, and you're going to start to understand why things unfolded the way they did. Your ego is going to be right there, and you have to be very careful, because your ego is going to want to be hard on yourself. Why didn't I know better? Why didn't I see this? Why did I expect this from this person? But that leads you to actually the next step of looking at yourself. And are you seeing yourself for who you are, how you are, and where you are? And that is quintessential. And the only way to do that is to be present, to see yourself in the moment, to do it without judgment, without being hard on yourself, being supportive and empathetic of what you're currently going through, and not overlooking any aspects of your reality that make you uncomfortable or don't feel good. None of this is easy. And I want to acknowledge the work that you're doing. Because in my clinic, as well as the way that I work with myself, I never tell anyone, I never tell myself that this is easy work. It's not. This is hard work, but this is life work. And if you want to smooth the edges of your reality, you have to start seeing things clearly and its entirety, without exception. Period. Now, I don't always like to see things black and white, but in this instance, it is black and white. Either you're seeing people and places and things for who they are, how they are, and where they are, or you're not, and it's leading you astray and creating more friction and suffering between you and that person, between you and that place, between you and that event, whatever it is, however it is. And I can guarantee you that there's going to be plenty of experiences coming up or even happening right now in your reality that you can sit back, zoom out, and look at to see how you're interacting, to see your perceptions, to see if you're outwardly placing blame on the other person. Why aren't they doing this? What is this? What's wrong with them? The question is not what's wrong with them. The question is what's wrong with me and the way I'm seeing them. What's wrong with me and the way I'm interacting with myself and ultimately with them. Take ownership. The way to take ownership is through introspection. The way to be introspective is to be present. And it always comes down to that. How present are you? Where are you right now? What are you thinking about? What are you feeling? Why are you feeling the feelings you're feeling? What is your ego telling you? And why are you listening to your ego? Very important questions. It's imperative that you're always in a state of observation. And again, a state of observation without judgment. Do not judge yourself. Do not judge others. See things clearly. Do not assign labels. Labels are tools of the ego. It's bad, it's good, it's horrible. No, things are just what they are. The question is, what do you want to do about it? So I think that I want to end on that note because I want it to be really concise. I wanted to give you this information so that you can pontificate, so you can sit with it, so you can analyze the relationships that are existing in your life for you to teach you to reflect inward, not outward, and to be present and peaceful. So I want to thank you for sharing these moments with me, these beautiful, precious, finite present moments. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you for listening to the Are You Being Present podcast, brought to you by the Presence Projects. Remember, you have a choice. Choose to be present.